Hello, everyone, and welcome to Past the Noise, the podcast show, whatever you want to call it, where we just have open discussion about whatever topic we've decided on for that week. I am your co-host, Michael Hightower, as always, joined by Apostle T.B. Walker. Apostle, how you doing this evening?
I'm awesome. Awesome.
Good,
Glad to be
good,
here.
good. Always. So last week we were having a discussion about hypersexuality in our culture, and particularly in males, how it affects the culture and how it sort of has permeated everything. And so this week we're going to continue on that because we didn't get to everything we wanted to get to. We didn't want to dig into the piece that pornography plays in our culture and some other things. So we're going to touch on some of that stuff tonight. As always, first of all, thank you for joining. Thank you for watching, whether it's now or later. If you watch this later on YouTube or our Facebook page, feel free to leave a comment. Feel free to leave a comment, share if you like our content. We certainly appreciate it. But as always, you are always welcome to join the conversation. I mean, we are just having a discussion, and we would love your input. We would love your input. We would love your thoughts. We would love your perspective. Because again, we're just starting a conversation, and we're inviting you to join in. As always, it does not mean you have to agree with us or something we don't agree. So it doesn't mean you have to agree with us. We just want to know what your feelings are on a particular topic. So agree, disagree. We just want you to have feel like you have input, and have your voice heard on this platform. So again, thank you for joining, and we're going to jump right into where we left off last week. So we left off last week. We were talking about hypersexuality in our culture, and we were talking about it how in sports, so the impact it has in sports. And we were talking specifically about Deshaun Watson, who has settled roughly 30 or so cases of improper behavior, sexual behavior, exposing himself, touching himself, having, forcing women to touch him while they're giving him massages. And so we were talking about how that's part of the culture where men sort of force themselves on women, and then women are forced to either fend them off or allow it to happen, so to speak. But when you're talking about employer, employee, or any kind of organization, whether you have hierarchy or whatnot, these kind of things can only happen when they're like permitted. So when this happened, Deshaun was playing for the Houston Texans. He was eventually traded to the Cleveland Browns. And so naturally the Cleveland Brown owners, which are husband and wife team, had to answer questions about, what was on your mind when you decided to take this man on. So let's start with the clip of the Cleveland Browns owners talking about their, how they got to the point where they were comfortable adding Deshaun Watson to their team.
Were you comfortable with the idea that Deshaun did not do anything wrong? Or is it more the idea that if he made mistakes or did something wrong, he's learned from them and it won't happen again? I think that would help provide some clarity for people as they think about this.
I think we got comfortable in the legal process. I mean, if you follow the legal process, it's part of the, we have to trust in the legal process. So I think that's what we did, is we trusted the process. And then, again, learning more and more details about Deshaun as a person, we felt good about Deshaun as a person.
Yeah, I think another way to say it is 2 different grand juries in 2 different counties looked at 9 different criminal cases and decided not to move forward. We have to trust that process. Okay. So I think that's really important. I haven't asked Deshaun this. Well, actually we have. I know that Deshaun learned through this process, just like all of us do every day in life, particularly when we hit a bump in the road. So do I think he's learned from this process? Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you think there?
They didn't answer the question. They didn't answer the question. The question was, did you think he did anything wrong? I mean, and how did you get past the fact that this man did things that you think were wrong, and yet you still had him to your organization? And they didn't really address that. What they addressed was, well, he's not under indictment. There's no grand jury indictment. There's no charges. There's no legal things. So we got comfortable with the fact that he's legally free, which he is. I mean, he's legally free to seek whatever employment he wants to, and any employer is free to employ him in any manner they want to. But it says more about them than it does about him. That you are the employer, you are the person in charge, and what you're saying is he wasn't charged with anything, so we're good. That we got covered with it. I mean, to me, that's it speaks to the permissibility in our culture. I mean, this is why you have hypersexuality run amok, because people in authority won't say that's what we're not. We're not doing that. We're not bringing you into our organization where we have women working, and if you didn't, but we have women employees, and we have other people involved in our organization who are women. We're not going to bring somebody in who behaved the way you behaved. Period.
Sure. And look at the question was really a character question. You know, I mean, they stumbled at it because it was a character question. You know, they were cloaked behind the legal issue and whether the grand jury, 9 grand juries decided not to move forward, but they really weren't asked the legal question. And, and I think that in some ways they gave us a really great answer in terms of how much character and versus money plays. You know, money and trumps character all day long. And so that's one of the things that we kind of see is really a part of the culture, that is there's a breakdown. There's a real breakdown in character value. You know, the question of, did the jury think so? The nuances of the case are such that, when you really look at it, you really realize that character almost means nothing now. That as long as a grand jury says that, that we couldn't find any more evidence to move forth legally, but from a moral standpoint, you can actually see that there's an issue. We're really seeing that morality, like a balloon with water in it, has been poked and there's almost nothing left.
That's exactly right. That's exactly the point. That when the legal system has acted or not acted, all you're left with is your morals. That's all you're left with. What is your moral? What direction is your moral compass pointing you in? Is this okay or is it not okay? Because the legal system has basically put it in your hands. Say, we're not going to do anything. What are you going to do? And it was interesting that he went back to the legal process only because that's the place where he has been not cleared, but that's the place where he's, I guess, cleared. I mean, that's the place where you feel most safe talking about him because legally he's clean as a whistle. They didn't answer the other question, which is, do you think he did something wrong? That's a very straightforward, pointed question. And it's a yes or no question to be quite honest with you. And they didn't answer because they couldn't, because the answer would be we don't really care.
Well, I think in the end of the day, the person who was asking this question probably asked what they thought was a softball or at least a direct question, right? They didn't realize that this was a deep conundrum. But when you don't care, when morality is not even involved, when character is really not the issue, but arm strength, and leadership skills and on-field generalship is really the major issue. You kind of stump him for a moment. It's like, do you see the way he looked at his wife? Like, well, he's asking a character. I don't know how because we haven't talked about that in the meeting. That wasn't a part of even the decision to get this guy. No, we were thinking whether we have a chance to win the division. What's our chances of getting to the next phase? We weren't thinking of character. So when he asked it, it was almost like they asked, what's the meaning of life? And he looked over like, why are they asking me?
Because in the end, they're thinking about what's the PR hit? What can we get away with? Can we bring him in and just like survive the PR and sort of get through it and get back to football? That's the calculus. The calculus is not, do we have a predator running around our facilities? It's like, can we get away with this? Is it okay? Because I mean, if you look at other players who have done, almost the Kaepernick, people did the same calculation and said, nope, we can't bring him in.
Right.
He's too toxic. He's too hot to handle. But this guy's not. I mean, I think it shows you where these people's values really lay in terms of the way that they look at people and look at players.
Well, what would be interesting because unfortunately, like Kaepernick was a decent football player, but he wasn't. His last few seasons weren't that great. What would be what would be interesting is if Kaepernick had the kind of arm that Deshaun Watson had. I wonder if his kneeling would have changed it. I think when you have a guy who might be in the middle of the pack, and we have a question of morality, it was easier. But I think once you put money and the possibility, if he was a stone cold winner, I'm not sure if the kneeling would have, if they would have done that with Brett Favre, if that was Brady who had done something, I'm almost positive because we had a cheating scandal that you didn't see.
Right.
You know, I mean, this is Tom Brady. So in some ways, you know, this is what money, you know, I mean, and Deshaun Watson is a much better athlete than a Kaepernick. So in some ways, what you're seeing is just people looking and saying, what, the potential for a Super Bowl versus, you know, let's settle this out of court with a couple of ladies. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And it's in our face.
No, you're right. I mean, if this is a third string guy or a guy in the practice squad, he's gone, and it's like no one's talking about him ever again. And so your point about Kaepernick's ability to offset whatever they thought he was in terms of toxicity with his play was like, he's not good enough. He's not good enough for us to take this hit. He's not going to lead us where we need to go. So that's another sort of calculus that's I mean, in a way, it's
how many guys out there do you think can handle 29 accusations? Other than Deshaun and Bill Cosby, who else do you know that can handle that number of accusations and be okay? The average guy would never. Listen, you're already telling everybody, listen, I'll see you. You know, hit me up with some commissary, because you already know what time it is. But like these guys, this is what we do with talent and fame. That's what it weighs much bigger than morality. Yeah. It's not even a question when you have that level of talent involved. And because I don't think that, I think this would be an easy morality question if the owners of the Browns were asked this very same question about some guy who was stealing cars on Martha's Vineyard, right? they would, well, listen, that can't happen here. I mean, he's got to go. They would know exactly what to do. This is because that guy doesn't have talent, right? Right. He's not benefiting them. But if that guy could throw like a rocket, I mean, just had an arm like a bazooka, they would say, listen, give the guy another shot. You know, people make mistakes because morality means nothing in comparison to talent in America. Yeah. That's the shame of, but that's what's being exposed here. That's why the Bill Cosby thing took so long. People just couldn't believe he was just too talented. I guarantee you there's some grandfather in, Hoboken, New Jersey wouldn't get that. They would have jumped on him so fast and they'd have run him out of town. They would have never had people cheering, and looking and saying, we still believe in you, Bill. No way. But that's what fame does in America. And that's a shame. Yeah. It's definitely. Well, yeah. Let's play another clip from the Brown Donors. We have a couple. I just want to play one more. From them. Let's see.
Here's what I think is that I think in this country and hopefully in the world, people deserve second chances. Okay, I really think that, and I struggle a little bit. Is he never supposed to play again? Is he never supposed to be part of society? Does he get no chance to rehabilitate himself? And that's what we're going to do, okay? And you can say, well, that's because he's a star quarterback. Well, of course, but if he was Joe Smith, he wouldn't be on the headlines every day. So we think people deserve a second chance. We gave Kareem Hunt a second chance, okay? And that's worked out pretty well, okay? We're hoping this will work out, and we have strong belief it will. That doesn't mean we don't have empathy for people affected, and we will continue to do so. But we strongly believe people deserve a second chance. We believe Deshaun Watson deserves a second chance.
Yeah, it looks like we lost Apostle Walker. So while we're waiting for him to get back, I'll just comment on that clip. So, he's sort of the owner there, Jimmy Haslam, the Cleveland Browns, sort of just, he just gave the game away entirely in that clip where he just says, listen, if it wasn't Deshaun Watson, we wouldn't even have touched him. The whole reason why he's on our team is because he's able. Here we go. Apostle's back.
I'm back. I don't know. I have no idea what happened there.
The
devil tried to silence me, but I refused to be silenced.
So I don't know if you saw the whole clip, but the owners basically said, we believe in giving people second chances, but also sort of said, well, if it wasn't Deshaun Watson, if it wasn't a star quarterback, would we have him on our team? Well, no. So he sort of gave away the whole game with that, was honest. Right. Like, no, he wouldn't be on our team if he wasn't the championship level quarterback. So that is what it is. I think he's very, very honest. But I think when you have people at the top who are, in this point, as an employer or whatever, who are willing to endure that, you're saying something not just about you or Deshaun Watson. You're saying something to the people who follow your team, to the people who support your franchise. Right now, Deshaun Watson's jersey is in the top sellers in the entire league. He hasn't played a single game, a single snap for the Cleveland Browns, and his jersey's flying off the shelves. I think that comes from the fact that ownership was going to embrace him and bring him in. And I do want to show this one last clip on this topic, because this is actual footage from actual Cleveland Browns games from fans. Let's take a look.
That's crazy, right?
It's crazy, but it's not crazy. It's crazy because they've been given permission to do that very same thing. These women are just in the way of us winning the division. These women are in the way. They're not important to us. They weren't important to the owners. Why should it be important to me? Some dude is just going to the game and I have a bunch of T-shirts to sell that says, give me a massage. Why should they matter more to me than they do to you? You employ them.
Absolutely. But again,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, you gave me permission to show up at your stadium with those signs, with those shirts, and with those jerseys.
Yes, absolutely. Now, if you give permission to do it, it doesn't mean that I would do it, right? If you give me permission to do, like if you give me permission to bring some white lightning in, and I bring white lightning in, it just kind of means, man, I've been waiting for somebody to give me the permission to go, because that means that I would bring it in, right? I'm the kind of guy who would drink white lightning right inside. So in some ways, this guy, whoever says, we're not thinking about those hoes, right? I mean, then in reality, isn't he already there? And aren't they working in cahoots? Isn't there already a culture where I'm already thinking it, because I've already got the signs ready, and I've got my wife and kids. We're all in agreement already. That's not the issue. The owner is kind of moving in lockstep with the culture that's already there. The owner isn't operating counterculture or giving permission. The owner is saying, hey, listen, I agree with you. We're all kind of on the same page.
Right.
That, we all are from the bottom to the top. The guy who is like struggling to just pay a ticket to the guy who's got the skybox are all kind of thinking, we definitely want to win a Super Bowl. How many, she'll get over it. He didn't actually rape him, right? He just kind of threw himself on him and around him. Right. Come on, give me a break. That's nothing. They'll get over it. But listen, let's get a ring. And I mean, that's not a new thing in America. And listen, I think the thing about it is that it's in the house. It's in regular American culture. It's not those guys at the top. This, I think the story here is not that it's Deshaun Jackson or the big guys. And it is really like, look at the regular fans. They're not outraged. It's their daughters. It's not the owner's kids that are working in a massage parlor. It's their kids. But look what Fame does. Yeah. This is not my daughter. And if it was, she should know better. We got to win a Super Bowl. Take one for the team.
Yeah.
What a crazy thought.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of a win at all costs. Who cares what happens to these other people type of thing. But it's interesting because, how are they hoes? What did they did nothing. They did nothing, and yet that is where women find themselves in our culture. Whether you're the victim, but yet somehow you must have done something to stimulate him, to make him do that. You made him do, somehow you enticed him. You had to have done something. It couldn't have just been he just out here being wild. You did something. Did you wear something that was too short and too tight? Did you say something that was sort of gave him a signal? Did you look at him in a certain way? Like, that is where women are in our culture. Like,
in every place in our culture, every place. And listen, if you look at in church, we chastise women because of their clothing, right? We never really chastise guys for what are you looking at? It's like, no, your skirt's too short. That's the reason why he's staring like that. Not that he's a creep. Not that, listen, he's a married man. Like, why is he looking over there? We don't look at him and chastise him for that. We look and say, See that trollop over there? She made him do that. We're going to protect our pastor, not like the guy who's supposed to be teaching you morality. You know, you got to protect him from the lady in the front row. The problem is that we've always demonized Eve.
Yeah.
That's, you know, from the very beginning, we've demonized Eve and we've never made Adam accountable. And so we're doing that very same thing in our lives up to this day. We're demonizing Eve. It's that very same excuse. It's the woman you gave me. That's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. She showed me her ankles. What a crazy thing. And like people say, yep, that's right. That's right. Tell somebody they liked it. And how many women do you think you'll get to shake their head and say, you know, I mean, be honest, she probably did. Mm-hmm. As if that's really real.
Yeah. It's not, but
as if assault is really, you know, ever warranted or ever desired. But we've been indoctrinated, and not just, you know, look at that. Look at that. That's not just those weren't just guys. There were women coming in that stadium.
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. This is women. This were women who weren't fighting for women. Who didn't believe in women.
No, it's not a gender thing. It's not.
It's culture.
Absolutely. The women feel the same way. Like, they messing up, you know, our chance to get to the winner. What are y'all doing? Right. You kept it for yourselves. I mean, they're just crazy. We have a comment. Let's see. Sean Fada. This is where women have been historically. They were owned by their husbands, and men in general viewed them as a sex object. No respect, and they are not viewed as a human being worth respecting.
Sure. You know, I think that, you know, obviously we've come, you know, a long way from that place, right? You know, but we're certainly nowhere at the goal. We're nowhere where we need to be. And I think that, you know, the thing is that men are learning. You know, men are in society in some ways is really in a learning phase concerning the value of women. And one of the things that women, I think, have to do is keep teaching. You know, have to continue to recognize that men and the culture that has been a patriarchal culture has to be trained in some ways on how to view women. And, you know, the hypersexuality of our society simply does not help us to see that. It doesn't help to do that. And with the complicity of women, you know, women going, I'm going to strip club with you. You know, that doesn't, it's not helping, you know, it's not helping in any way, shape, or form.
Not at all. No. Not at all. Not at all.
I don't get the idea that, like, this is better. I'll be right there with you. You know, and so I think it's not a weird thing that women are, you know, all now relationships have just morphed into some strange things where there's threesomes and, you know, maybe I like women and men. And we just kind of wonder, like, where would that come from? And all of that is this hypersexuality that really kind of stems from this lack of morality, lack of control that we have, a permission that we really need to get fenced in.
Yeah. Absolutely. We have another comment. So on Fada again. Did Deshaun learn anything about his situation? It is not clear to me. Yes, Deshaun learned that if you are not brought up on criminal charges and you're in the NFL, you can get $230 million guaranteed after you've been out of the league for an entire year, haven't played a lick of football. You can still do that if you have talent. So what you learn is that if I'm good enough and I'm talented enough, things will work out for me and I'll be okay. But I don't think he learned anything about his situation, about his interactions with women. I don't think he learned anything. I mean, the fact that the Browns had to put in his contract, you can only get massages from here or from there. You got to approve.
Right.
That's it. They don't think he learned anything. They don't think he learned anything. They know this dude's got to be monitored and watched, and we got to watch this guy all the time. Like that in and of itself is a bad commentary.
Absolutely. And listen, football is not a teacher. So since it, you know, it can't teach you anything. That's what he got out of it. He got like football, got more football out of it. Right. So, you know, we've watched this in the NFL and other sports where where this sexual addiction and sometimes these sexual depravities that are there, if they go untreated, they continue. And that's why there's NBA players, ex-players that are in prison right now, you know, for things that really stem from, like, we saw that all the way from high school. You know, we saw this in college. You know, they're football players, you know, that we see the same type of, wow, that's Antonio Brown. There's another accusation in that same area. We see that in hip hop, you know, where it's like, wow, so this guy's now going to prison again for rape. But if untreated, this is going to get worse because it's serious. This hypersexuality has not just brought guys who are just, feeling on themselves all the time. There are some serious diseases. It's really altered the brain. And you match that with the idea that I'm entitled as an athlete, as a rapper, as a person in society that, is acclaimed. Oh, man, it's a recipe for a monster.
And we've got a lot of monsters running around for sure.
Absolutely.
Another comment. Clarice says, look how he just stood there silent and let the bosses handle all questions. There's nothing else for him to do. I mean, from his perspective, if they're going to speak for me, I don't have to say anything. Like they're going to take whatever heat is coming. I'm just going to do my suspension thing and I'll be back and I'm good. Now, he'll have to answer some questions himself when he comes back, but he's going to give a bunch of non-answers. I just want to move on. I just want to play football. I want to help the team win. So the answers to the questions are never going to be answered. I mean, he's not going to give any answer because he does not have to, because his employers didn't make him step up and say, apologize or do anything other than what he did, which is, I'm innocent. I didn't do anything wrong. And that's my story. I'm sticking to it. So that's how he's going to handle it forever. So that's what it is. Putting the call-in link in the chat in case anyone wants to jump on and give some perspective. Let's jump now to because you kind of going that way to the issue of pornography. Just pornography. Like last week, you were talking about really pornography has gone mainstream. It used to be, I mean, when we were younger, not that it was better, but those things were considered at least dirty or you shouldn't be doing it or something. But now it's like you can get it anywhere. It's like mainstream. Things you mentioned full frontal nudity, on shows on HBO or Netflix or whatever streaming service you get. So you can get pornography anywhere, anytime, on demand, as much as you want. I think that's where I notice where our culture is in terms of pornography. I don't think it's one of those things where people think it's just harmless. What's the big deal? What am I doing in my house? It's my personal business. It's none of your business. Without realizing the full effects of viewing pornography. Just from a general, before we're going to get into some of the science, but just common sense will tell you that if you're artificially exciting yourself, that's not how your body was made. We're not made to be at full blast all the time in anything. Like you don't run forever. Like you got to stop and your body recycles and recharges and whatnot. You can't stay in a heightened sense of sexual arousal for an extended period of time and expect that no damage was done. That doesn't make any sense, just as a sort of a life experience type of thing.
Right. Well, I think one of the things about it is that that happens to people that it's kind of like it's like a drug, right? I think most people who start smoking crack or meth or something like that, recognize you can't stay up for 5, 6, 7 days every day, and they realize it, but they don't realize that that's part of the addiction. That you if you get addicted, that's what can happen. And I think that people didn't think, you can get addicted to pornography. They didn't realize that they're the same tracks that are in your brain, the same dopamine and serotonin that's released, with crack cocaine and with methamphetamines are the same ones that, pornography works on as well. And so that same ability to say, listen, I'm not looking at porn today. Listen, if you got to say, I'm not looking at porn today, you're already in it. Because how many people have to say, I'm not looking at the History Channel today? No way. No more Discovery Channel for me. No one else is saying, you're not saying that.
Right.
So I think people didn't realize that this has claws. This gets into your psyche. This begins to really develop its own tracks in your brain to where you begin to think certain things are sexually or normal that are really abnormal.
Absolutely. I think you can file that under, eating one potato chip. I mean, that's never happens, right? When you have one, the body says, no. I need another one. And you, no, that's not enough. And you keep, because you're never satisfied. And if you think about the way that pornography is presented, how could you ever actually be satisfied? Like, we're going to get into some of the numbers, but just quickly, it's in the U.S. alone, pornography is a $12 billion business.
Right.
So people are not just eating one potato chip.
Right. Absolutely.
A whole bag and then saying, I need another bag, because that's just the way that addiction and that sort of cycle of arousal and then whatever works.
Well, I mean, listen, $12 billion is a huge number, right?
That's a lot of money.
But when you think about $12 billion, that's for porn that's paid for, right? When you think about the amount of porn,
industry. That's the industry.
That's the industry.
Right.
When you think about the amount of porn that's free, that means that people are getting porn free on certain, certain hubs are getting porn free, and they're also paying. I mean, that tells you that there's a huge. That's not enough.
Can't get enough.
What they get for free is just a bait.
It's not enough.
It's
That's
not
the hook.
That's just the hook. Here's the free stuff. Tell me that's not like a crack dealer saying,
it is.
Listen, let me give you some freebies just to start you out. Right. You think
on the house
over. I got 2 vials for free. I didn't pay for them. He already knows you coming back day after day after day. You paying from this point on. It's the same trick.
Absolutely. It's the exact same trick. Let's take a look at some of the science behind the way that pornography affects the brain.
Pornography constitutes about 25% of all search engine requests and is the 4th most common reason people give for going on the internet. And while it may seem to simply facilitate an instinctual sexual response linked to millions of years of evolution, the truth is, pornography has dynamically changed over time, ultimately molding our tastes and desires. The not-so-shocking truth is that pornography has profound consequences for the brain and acts in many ways like a drug. With prolonged exposure, your tolerance is increased, and many often find themselves addicted. Though it's not a physical substance, it leads to the same general loss of control, the compulsiveness to seek out the activity despite negative consequences, and withdrawal when it goes away, much like that of gambling or running, for example. The issue is that continued exposure can cause long-term or even lifelong neuroplastic change in the brain. Dopamine is released as a reward whenever we accomplish something, whether it be eating to sustain life or sexual activity to produce future life. And this dopamine consolidates neural connections in order to drive us to perform the same activity in the future. In other words, it alters and forms the brain cells to motivate certain actions. It rewires your brain.
That's deep.
Yes, and it's pretty clear. And it makes sense. I mean, and all of us have had, in some point of our life, had some behavior that would be at least semi-addictive, where you just you do it all the time, you can't stop or whatever. So you understand how that feels and what that's like. And that particular presentation in that context makes sense. Like,
sure.
It makes sense that your body gets a reward, and then it says, "Let's have another."
Right.
I mean, that just makes sense, and how it rewires the brain, how it rewires your brain to get more. And even if you think about it, so that means even when you're not looking, you're thinking about it. So if I'm not looking at it, I'm thinking about looking at it. If I'm looking at it, I'm thinking about looking at it more. So it's almost like a vicious cycle, but that's what addiction is. It's a vicious cycle where you just continue. And the part about, like, your tolerance increases. So now I'm looking for things other than just straight sex, for example. I'm looking for other stuff, something more exciting, more exotic. And it was interesting that he said it doesn't just feed, right, your desires. It actually molds and shapes them. Like, now you're looking at it like, I want that. I want to try that. I want to do that. That's what we should be doing. And it again, it just makes sense. But this is what we've unleashed all over our culture. It's everywhere. It's out there. Like, there's no shame. There's nothing. Like, people like, man, I got a porn page. I got an OnlyFans page where I share my nudes or whatever. That's how I make my money. That's how I make a few dollars.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's insidious. When you look at, I mean, if you ever wanted to, if you were ever really looking at the spiritual definitions of flesh, what is flesh? Man, this is, that presentation kind of shows you, like, what flesh really is, because it isn't our arms and, our physical body. You really begin to see that desires. And one of the things that the enemy does through pornography is rewires the brain and remolds your desires. What's that going to do but destroy families when that person that's been given to you can't satisfy you, because where you originally is now remolded. It's like your desires are now changed. Mm-hmm. I used to want this. This was the guy you married is not the guy that I am now, because pornography has really rewired me to only want now that stuff I've been seeing. If you don't do it that way, you don't have that kind of body. If you don't talk like that, I can't even really want it, desire it anymore. That's demonic. That's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we talking about changing brain chemistry. That absolutely is. Um, and obviously, your brain chemistry could be changed in a positive way, but certainly, obviously, pornography is not doing, it's
Right.
doing the opposite. It's rewiring you to want things that are not obviously not natural. Because if you weren't thinking about it before, why are you thinking about it now after you watch after you watch porn?
Right.
Clearly, that's the driver. That's the thing that's put it in. Oh man, I never thought of that. Well, okay,
Right.
that could be the like if you never thought of it, why do you think it's okay now? Why would you think, oh, I
Right.
never thought of it, but and it's the but that's getting you in trouble because you're like, I never thought of that, but you know what can it hurt to try?
Listen, when you think about the idea of having a mind, from a spiritual perspective, where there's a discussion of the idea that man is continually devising evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you think about the idea that a person is continually devising wickedness in their brain, and pornography comes and brings things that they hadn't even devised, tell me that's not demonic. Like a man, isn't that what the scripture said? The man, he's continually thinking about evil, and yet there's some stuff that pornography can bring that even that evil mind had not, like I hadn't thought about that. That's one of the things that it does. It brings individual wickedness into places that were not conceived of by a 10-year-old who's now looking at a pornography site. He just couldn't have thought about it. Relationships that were fine before this, now there are things that have been brought into the mix. It's like we hadn't even thought about that and conceived of that. And I can't even do that. So now that this is in here, the marriage that used to be wonderful can't work now because I can't do that thing that has been remolded in her mind to satisfy her by a force that's not possibly real for her.
No, it's not. And you mentioned earlier about the whole the definition of flesh, especially from a spiritual perspective. And we're warned in Scripture what happens when you put your eyes on things like the Scripture about lusting after women. That's pretty clear. I think I have that. Yep, I'm gonna put that up real quick. I said, by saying to you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. That's Matthew 5:28. That's pretty straightforward, and it speaks directly to porn. Now, people would say, the Bible doesn't say anything directly about porn. I beg to differ. I think that Scripture speaks directly to that because there's no other reason to look at it other than to be in a state of lust. What's the other point? That's it. So I think that the Bible has warned us, don't do these things because not only is there great danger to yourself, but the entire culture that we built is being torn down by these types of things where people are focused on the sexuality of things and all this kind of craziness, thinking it undermines your entire culture. I think like for instance, when we think about the Bible account of Sodom and Gomorrah, we think just about the sexual part of it, specifically homosexuality because of the interaction between Lot and the men regarding the angels. But it's really about an entire culture that turned their back on God and said, we're going to do whatever we want. Anything we can think of to do, we're just going to do it, and we don't care. Like, they weren't like whispering, Lot. They were like, Lot, open up. We're here. What's up? They're in the street doing this. And I think the way that we have opened up these floodgates to pornography is the exact same thing. We just open up the door and say, do whatever you want.
Absolutely. Remember, I mean, Lot wasn't repulsed by it. He was, by living in that culture, Lot wasn't shocked by it. He simply was thinking, come on, this isn't right to do. These are guests in my house.
Right. Take my daughters instead.
Take my daughters. I mean, we live in this serious community. When you look at what Jesus was talking about here, they were asking the question about adultery. The idea that, committing the act of adultery is the problem, right? And Jesus was like, no, there's another hidden issue here. It's looking upon another woman to lust after. I think that when you look at this, obviously, pornography's been around for a long time.
Sure.
And ways of pornography, and even in Jesus' day, the idea of pornography, we found those in Rome. You uncovered frescoes of all kinds of pornography that had been around thousands of years ago. Jesus would have known about it, which is one of the reasons why he goes beyond the idea of like, it's not whether you're faithful to your wife. How many people do you think are committing adultery right now by what they're looking at on their phone? And the very same guys who are looking and saying, hey, the Bible didn't speak about that. That's what Jesus was saying. I see where you guys are going down at the bathhouse and just watching.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff that you just writing on there, just that graffiti that's on the wall,
right,
that people go to and just look at, and those pictures. He said, listen, just looking like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of those things are not new, and they disrupt the culture and all that comes with adultery, the damage of actual physical adultery. I think Jesus was warning that, hey, that same damage comes with just looking and lusting in that way.
Right. I mean, because again, to your point, lust takes you out of away from God and into yourself. So lust is self. Lust is all about me, what I want, my pleasure. Exactly. It's not about God. It's not about my neighbor. It's me. So I don't care what my neighbor wants. Like, if it doesn't satisfy me, then I don't really care. So I think the problem with the lust is it carries you away, away from God and into a place where I would suspect that the people in Sodom and Gomorrah didn't even realize the state that they were. This has become so normalized.
That's right.
Just how we live. What are you talking about? This is Sodom and Gomorrah. This is how we do. And just were completely oblivious and spiritually dead. I mean, dull and dead, because of their behavior, because of their lusting all day.
Sure, and I suspect that they didn't realize the damage that was happening. That people who were walking out of their homes thinking that I'm sure that my my spouse is satisfied with me and I'm satisfied with her, had no idea that this lust has brought me to only satisfy myself. So how many people were walking around thinking they were doing the job and actually were not? That somehow they were in households that were not fulfilled, but they were fulfilled. So they kind of thought things are going well. And of course, because of that lack of fulfillment, that person went outside the relationship to get. And so the cycle begins. And then you have a situation where marriage is not even where you're going to get fulfilled. We're not even thinking about it that way. You're going to need 2 or 3 people to be satisfied. And that's where we are today, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways, that's what this pornographic, highly sexual society tells you, kind of like, how many guys you got to sleep with to get to the right one? And nobody's mad about that. We don't expect the guy that you're going to be a virgin when you get married. No, we laugh at that guy.
Right.
Now we should applaud that guy, right? But we don't. We look at that guy and say he's not experienced. You really have needed to have been through 5 or 6 at least. Before And you have women who are saying, I don't know if I want that guy. I need a guy who's experienced. I want a guy who's been with several other women before he gets to me, so he can practice on them.
That's insane. That is absolutely insane. Let's take a look at some statistics. Mentioned earlier, worldwide, I mentioned about the 12 billion in the US, but worldwide, pornography is a $97 billion business. 97 billion. 40% of males, 11 to 16, reported that online pornography gave them ideas about the type of sex they wanted to try. And as of April 2021, 2 porn sites are in the top 10 most visited search sites worldwide. As of May 2021, porn websites received more traffic in the US than Twitter, Instagram, Netflix, Pinterest, and LinkedIn combined. And in 1 out of 8 porn titles shown for first-time users on porn homepages describes acts of sexual violence. I mean, this is kind of where we are with this.
Yeah, and this is dangerous. I mean, I think this is dangerous because look how young they're starting.
11 to 16.
11 to 16.
11 to 16, and the brain hasn't fully formed. I believe they're like 15 or so. So if you're looking at porn at 11, you're redoing you're wiring your brain, not even rewiring it. You're doing the wiring.
Yes.
Then. I mean, your experiences and things that you do 11, well, not 11, but like 5 to 15, it really forms your brain. Like if you're looking at porn from 11 to 15, you have hardwired your brain in a really destructive way. And and
that hardwiring is serious because I think use that phrase, but people don't. That hardwiring is like that's it. It's very
serious.
This is how I am. And so,
Exactly.
as we're watching a society, we're shaking our head right now, we don't realize that, some of this violence that we see, against women, some of this violence that we see, period, because porn, it is a show. It's about getting to, a certain end. And some pornography sites are about violence. Violence is there's a sexual proclivity for violence in some areas, right? So when you see this, there are young people who are being wired to connecting sex with violence. And that is going to be, that's where it leads to date rape, with guys who looked and said, my interpretation, because my wiring is that she wanted this. I thought it was certain that she wanted me to choke her, because that's what I saw.
Yeah.
That's where I got my education, my sexual education from.
And so that's what's going to be in your brain.
Right.
That's what's going to be in your brain. We have another comment. Sean Fader says 2 questions. Do you think that technology has played a major role in making pornography more accessible? And secondly, what about the person who is creating the porn, whether they are male or female? What happens to their perception of sex and lovemaking? So, first question: technology, absolutely, because you don't need anything but the cheapest cell phone you can find.
Right.
Whatever the cheapest phone is, you can buy the cheapest phone and you can make porn. You can make your own porn whenever you want, however you want to do it. Just you don't need anything else. So technology has not made it easy, not just to make it, but you can sell it on that same device. You can make it on your phone, you can sell it from your phone, and it's made it easier. And so people are jumping on, and in some ways, it's profitable. People can make money off it, so they do it. They do it because it's like, relatively speaking, it's easy money. You spend however long shooting it, you upload it, and just the money comes in. And once it's done, it's like it just keeps making money.
That's right.
And so definitely that's the technology has for sure made it easier, and obviously not in a good way.
Sure. Technology I think technology from the very beginning has made porn easier, right? From the days of the printing press, right? Anytime you increase technology, it makes it easier. But what's there is already there, right? The desire for it, the appetite for it is already there. The technology just kind of feeds and makes it easier to get because if you made it easier to get spinach, but people don't like spinach, I don't care how easy you make it. Like Amazon's right there. You can definitely order spinach if you want to, but there's not some spinach run because spinach is not like the favorite vegetable of America. But now if you open the door for pornography and people now run toward pornography, it really says, hey, the reason why you can open this door and make it so easy to get it is because we want it. We want it. So what happened? So I think that you've got a group of people where those porn sites out there, they didn't create lust. Lust was already in us. Lust was already in people. And what happens to the people who create the porn? Well, what happens to a drug dealer who sells drugs? Maybe never uses drugs, gets addicted to the game, gets addicted to money. Everybody gets addicted. The blind lead the blind, they both go through the ditch. So that person who makes porn, who is directing porn, is watching the same porn and is going to have the same effects as a person who is going to be skewed, and view of sexuality is going to be absolutely off kilter in the exact same way as a person who's performing the acts.
No, totally skewed. There's no doubt about that. Thanks, Sean Fader, for the questions. And let's look at some more of these stats here. Some more here. So 1 in 4 18 and 24-year-olds listed pornography as the most helpful resource to learn about sex. A recent survey found that 53% of boys, 39% of girls believe that pornography is a realistic depiction of sex. And of the adolescents exposed to porn, 28% were first exposed by accident, 19% were unexpectedly shown pornography by someone else, and 19% searched for it intentionally. And then of the 75% of parents who thought their kids hadn't been exposed to porn, actually 50 to 52% had been exposed. Again, those things sort of speak for themselves in terms of the way that it's sort of infiltrated our culture, but also that people, to your earlier point, that people think that this is a good resource, like it's a book, like it's a manual for how to learn about sex, and people believe that because our culture has sort of embraced that.
Well, we've kind of made pornography the major league of sex, right? I mean,
yeah,
you know, if you want to really find out how to pitch, you know,
mm-hmm.
you go to the Yankees or the Mets bullpen, and you watch them. You know, if you want to learn about football, you know, there's football camps you go to, right?
Right.
And you know, so this is the, you know, major league of sex in our minds. And so as kids are looking and saying, hey, I really want to be good here, they're really looking and saying, I guess this place that fabricates sex is really the place where I need to be, where they say cut and get the right angle, and here's the right, you know, lighting. They, you know, and what a shame, because there's the lighting is not going to be there in their real lives.
Right. No writing and no lighting and no director.
Yeah, no director saying, no, wait a minute, you do that right. No, there's nobody going to say cut when you know things don't go right. And so what's that going to do to their psyche when they really believe that they really are not able to actually perform adequately, when in reality the pornography set an impossible bar.
Right. You trying
that was
to
like that was, you know, that thing that you looked at that looks like that was over a period of like, wow, look at this guy. But listen, that's over a period of like all day. There's no breaks here. You know, what are you talking about?
Right. Absolutely crazy. So here's some of the effects of viewing pornography, especially in younger people. So teen pornography consumption negatively impacts adolescent self-esteem and mental health. That's just be obvious to some of the points you just raised. Like if you're a young person and you're seeing this, you're like, I can't do that.
Right.
And your self-image and self worth will take a hit. Studies have shown that the consumption of pornography was significantly associated with increases in sexual aggression, both verbally and physically, among males and females alike. That's because of the way that porn depicts sex. If there's an aggressive, you know, if you see aggressive stuff, this is what sex is. You got to be aggressive verbally and physically. But it's interesting that it affects males and females the same way. That's because males and females both have brains. And so if you're rewiring of a brain doesn't respond to gender, it's just like if you're looking at this is how you're going to respond to this sort of thing. So next one, children and adolescents are widely considered the most vulnerable audience to sexually explicit material. Again, they don't know anything and their brains are still forming. So if you give them stuff that's going to feed their brains when their brains are still forming, that is poison, they're going to end up with poison brains. I mean, that's just
right.
What else do we expect? And then exposure to pornography has been shown to contribute to concentration problems, low motivation, depression, social anxiety, and negative self-perceptions, especially in children and adolescents. Again, sort of commonsensical. Like, I mean, it's sort of stunning that that you can actually have research studies on children and adolescents who have watched porn, but you can because you have children and adolescents who are being exposed to porn. So
absolutely.
You can research studies and say, how is this affecting them and how is this making them feel? And you see that, you know, a lot of these things that we attribute maybe to other things, like, you know, why he's not doing well in school and he doesn't want to play sports anymore. And she was just all into the band, but now all of a sudden she doesn't want to do a musical instrument.
Right.
That could be this. It could be.
Absolutely.
Because 75% of the parents who thought their kids weren't looking, it turns out that more than half of them were looking. So the parents are thinking it's A, but really, no, mama, it's B. It's their mind being poisoned by this pornography stuff. That's why they're putting this other stuff down. They're depressed because of that. It's not because they're being bullied at school. It's because they spend 2 hours a day watching porn.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, when you think of pornography, but even just regular TV, you know, that crazy scene where, you know, the people decide, like, you know what? Yes, we're gonna sleep together, and they come into the apartment and slam the door open, and they're banging each other against the walls, and then all of a sudden just clearing out the table. You know, listen, the truth be, I've been here, you know, I've been on this earth for a few years. The reality is that doesn't happen on a regular basis. Nobody goes and just destroys their living room for a one night stand. That doesn't happen. Can you imagine the number of people who have really sat back and thought, like, I've never had a romantic encounter like that, where my husband is just throwing me against the wall and banging me against every, you know, plate in the house. And, you know, that's TV. What a thing that it can almost make you think that's real romance, that's real passion, where we almost hurt each other. It's violent, but it's made to look romantic,
Mm-hmm.
knocking everything off the table, and that it's made to look romantic. And amazingly, on primetime TV, that's what people are beginning to think real intimacy is.
But in our culture, isn't violence sexy?
Yeah,
don't we sexualize violence just generically? Like,
absolutely.
I mean, so that sort of fits. So you just put them together, sex and violence together in
Right.
one scene, and like, hey, this is like you said, this is romantic. This is like, we
Right.
ain't getting better than this. Is the height of romance. Like, this is forever. This is like a forever relationship. When it, to your point, no one's destroying their home and their clothes and the vase that their aunt gave them. No one's
other
doing all that for that.
other than the guy who's affected by this. And when
Well,
you get it, it's nothing like you thought.
Right.
Because he doesn't stop. It's not a gentle choking. It's not like TV. The guy who won't take no for an answer. It's not like TV. He's going too far because of the hypersexuality has rewired the brain where he doesn't see you as a real person. He honestly thinks this is what you want. And I think that, a lot of people have, look at combined sex and violence, loving of the bad boy. But you know what? That's always ended in a black eye or worse.
Right.
Because, the bad boy is bad. That's, bottom line, like that's the name, right?
Yeah. I think the or worse is the normal course of business is that black eye is a good night, but the rest
is on a good night.
Is going to because because the bad boy with the rewired brain he's going to force himself on you and do whatever he wants.
I mean, listen, look at Happy Days, right? Wasn't the Fonz the guy who had 21 years old, still around the high school with a motorcycle? I mean, he was really the bad guy, right? But that was the
he was the cool guy.
He was a cool guy. And
right.
from back in the day till now, we've kind of glamorized the bad boy. Get over here, honey. And the square guy finishes last. He gets his milkshake kicked over.
That's and you think about it, but that was pretty tame compared to what we see today.
Absolutely.
But the principle is still the same. We have another comment. Cervez asks, if you think about it, a lot of hip hop music out there today is like audio pornography. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. But and because it's audio visual, at the end of the day, hip hop artists are going to also do videos.
Mm-hmm.
So there is pornography for the ear as well as for the eye. There is that pornography for the eye. But that's been there again for some time. When you look at Marvin Gaye and then sexual healing, there's been a lot of pornography in the ear that's been allowed in a way that hip hop is kind of built upon.
I mean, hip hop and just music in general, R&B. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when, if you were going to have female company, you had to have Luther or somebody of that ilk ready to play. I mean, to set the mood. Because music can set mood. Music can set mood and affect people the way people interact for sure. So and we use that, and so that is also a form of sort of artificial. It's almost like pornography, like you said, for the ear. Like you're listening to it, like I wasn't really thinking about that until I just heard this. So the music came on, like, okay, does that seem right? That the music puts you in another state of being mentally, like that seems okay. It's not okay, but it was part of the culture. It's like, you crazy? You don't have no Luther,
right?
Like, you got like it was part of what it was normalized. It was part of what we did. It would be what people did, or else like if you don't do that, then she's not going to do anything for you. So it's like that's where we were, and it was all geared toward. I mean, to that end, it was all geared to getting a woman to do certain things.
Right.
Getting a woman to be intimate with you was the end goal, and that was just one of many tools that you use to sort of get from A to B.
Absolutely, and the music actually just described it, right? It kind of Whereas here's what I want to do to you, right?
Sure.
That's what the song was really about. So what pornography, the visual pornography showed you what the song actually told you. Because it kind of, and I
Yeah.
want to take your clothes off, and I want to
Right.
do this, and here's, I want to take the oil. And so all of that was, you know, in some ways, if the guy has oil, right,
Right.
is it different than the guy who says, and listen, put it right here? Like, so, I mean, aren't they kind of working in cahoots?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and yeah, I mean, looking back and thinking about it, I mean, it's that, you know, now that we know it's crazy. It's but it, you know, but again, because it was sort of normalized in culture, we sort of that was our teacher, like sort of this
Right.
is what you do if you want to get from, again, you want to get from point A to B. These are the tools of the trade if you want to
Right.
get there. And so, you know, it was what it was, but it was, again, if you look back on it, it's sort of like that's, I think to your earlier comment, demonic. Really,
Yeah.
it's demonic.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why the exposing of it is so important, because, you know, it's
Yeah.
so interwoven in the culture that you actually see it as something normal, something natural.
Mhm.
And you don't really see the demonic element that really set the mood for fornication, you know, that we were
Right.
looking for,
Wow.
that
Yeah.
we were kind of setting and ministered to with fornication. You know, and it
Mhm.
was told to us, you know, I just met you, and, you know, we just walking down the park, and like, I want to take you home and do this. And so we, you know, we heard the fornication in our ear. We were thinking of the fornication in our minds, you know, and we set the music so that it set us up for fornication. And we never thought about, like, man, that just is so, that what a trick of the enemy to kind of walk us clearly and calmly. And with people saying, let me get out of the room for you, because I know you guys, you know, because it's romantic.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Those were, yeah, the bad old days. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what, yeah, I mean,
there.
yeah, it's yeah. And to your point, like, with the way that we've, you know, sort of socialized this stuff, we're really headed for, I mean, in a way, we have Sodom and Gomorrah in this country. In our
Oh, no
culture
doubt.
now. We have that now, which is a turning away from God and sort of like embracing whatever I feel like doing, whatever feels good. I'm not hurting anybody. It's behind closed doors. It's this, it's that. Who cares where I get my desires from, as long as I just, you know, have a willing partner, however you define that. Like, all these things and all these excuses are sort of built into and sort of go against a normal, actual God endorsed type of relationship. Like, it's all against the way that God has told us to interact with the opposite sex. It's 100% opposed to it, and we're just
absolutely.
We said, give us more. Yeah, give us more. Can we figure out a way to get it on 10 platforms instead of one? Like, we just keep piling on, which is crazy. Piling on.
Well, you know, I mean, you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, right? I mean, Lot really offered a substitute that he thought would be better, right?
Absolutely,
and this would be better. It's really kind of the same way that we look at it. I mean, with you know, with homosexuality, transsexuals, LGBTQ, you know, people liking anime, you know, and furries and all kinds of different polyamory.
Mm-hmm.
If they're fornicating, but it's male and female, we kind of look and say, at least it's that. Let me offer that. That's a solution I can live with. Lot looked at it and said, listen, heterosexual abuse of these women, my daughters, that's better than this. This breaks so many taboos that even this abnormal thing has now become the best of the worst. And we now look and say, I mean, listen, at least he's not wearing a dress. I mean, he's out there, and he's got as many chicks as he can find, but listen, I'll take it over him being over here with this guy. And we don't realize that we're not looking for God's value. We're really looking for the best of the worst that we can find in our values. Yeah,
best of the worst is a pretty sad commentary, and we're over time. But just to wrap that up, I think that the thing, because I actually read it today or yesterday, the whole Sodom and Gomorrah account, and you're struck when you read that the angels struck the men who were trying to get into the house blind, and they continued to try to find the door.
That's right.
I think that sums up the culture that they had created. And we're sort of doing the same thing now, where we're telling people, listen, this thing is going to affect your kids in negative ways. It's going to affect you in a negative way.
Right.
It's going to alter your relationships. It's going to damage your relationships. It's going to make, you know, things worse. And we're still saying, we're still trying to find the door.
That's right.
We're still, where's the door? Where's the door?
Right.
So, yeah. Like it's the same way. I think that when we think about Sodom and Gomorrah, we think about just the homosexual aspect of it, and not just the total cultural
Right.
and decay of the whole situation, which is really what it was. Not just the sexual part, just the total turning back on God and saying, "We got this."
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think you summed it up correctly.
All right, man. So we are a little over time. That's all right. But man, it's a great conversation as always, man.
I enjoyed
your insights and your input. So listen. So hope that people who are watching enjoyed. Thank you for those of you who chimed in. Share this content with on your platforms. We're on YouTube and Facebook. So you can go to either of those platforms and do a search for us and share our content and whatnot. So we hope you will do that. And we thank you as always for joining us. And we will see you next week.
Appreciate it.
All right. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Good night, everyone. God bless.